And I'm not giving up, I'm not giving up, no, not me. Even if nobody else believes, I'm not going down that easily. So don't give up on me.
Hey everyone, are you rad for Christ? You fired up for Jesus? Welcome back to another episode of Radical Christianity, the talk show that highlights God in action. I'm Drew, your host, and it's awesome that you joined us today. Okay, folks, gather around for a tale that'll have you questioning if you accidentally stumbled into a comedy show or a courtroom drama. Picture this, a group of religious broadcasters armed not with swords but with lawsuits charging into battle against the U.S. government. It's like David versus Goliath, only with more copyright laws and significantly less slingshots. So these brave souls, let's call them the musical crusaders, are taking on the mighty Copyright Royalty Board. Now, that's a name that just screams excitement, right? I can already hear the theme music playing in the background. A dramatic remix of Amazing Grace, perhaps. All right, so what's a religious broadcaster's favorite type of music? Well, hip-hop. It's like hip-hop, but only more blessings per beat. Our heroes are crying foul play because apparently when it comes to online music streaming rates, the government has a favorite child, and it's not the one with the hymnals. Oh no, it's NPR, the golden child of secular broadcasting, enjoying rates that make our religious broadcasters' non-commercial music license committee look like they're paying in gold doubloons. Picture the scene at the Supreme Court, lawyers in suits arguing passionately, quoting legal jargon that sounds more like a foreign language than English. And in the middle of it all, you have John Birch, our legal hero, proclaiming, "The government punishes non-commercial religious broadcasters above a modest listener threshold." It's like a courtroom rendition of "Let My People Go," and with a copyright twist. But wait, there's more. These broadcasters aren't just fighting for themselves, they're fighting for religious freedom, for the right to spread their message without feeling like they need to sell their souls for a song. It's a battle of biblical proportions where instead of slaying giants, they're slaying giant royalty rates. Okay, so why did the religious broadcaster go to court? Because he heard they were giving out free trials. And let's not forget the absurdity of all this. Imagine the government trying to explain to the Supreme Court why NPR gets the VIP treatment while our heroes are stuck paying premiums like they're streaming music from a solid gold jukebox. In the end, it's not about music rates. It's about standing up for what you believe in, even if it means facing a copyright dragon or two along the way. So, to all the religious broadcasters out there, keep fighting the good fight, and remember, when life gives you copyright lemons, make a musical lemonade with a dash of religious freedom. After all, he is risen, and so shall fair streaming rates for all. Okay, that's enough of that. So tell me, are you rad for Christ? You fired up for Jesus? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited for this guest. He's a good friend of mine and has a great story to tell. So let's have a huge, warm welcome for David Tangipa. Woo! Man, great to have you here, buddy. Sit down. All right. David! So glad you're finally here.
I'm glad I could join you.
Man, Radical Christianity is not the same without you, brother.
Yeah.
No, literally, we've been friends for a while, and and we've talked. I remember when you were just doing consulting.
Just a staffer. Just a staffer working on Supervisor Nathan Magzig, and I still work for him.
Yeah. So. Oh, yeah. You still work for Nathan?
Still work for him as I'm moving on into these other endeavors. I still work for him. I'm on my lunch break right now, actually. So.
Well, Nathan's cool. I'm sure he'll give you the slack. He's been on the show.
He's an amazing man.
Yeah. In fact, he's got one of my yard signs in his front yard for Jesus for President.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I've said. Yeah, I know exactly where it's at.
So, if you want one of those, I got to get you one, too.
I would love one.
Yeah, I got them in my car. Basically, the way that we do things here, I'm sure you're familiar with it, we do testimony to, calling. So why don't you start us off with how you met Jesus?
Yeah, so my mother is an amazing human being. And so just a little bit on my life. So my father was in the military. My mother's an island girl. My mother used to do in-home care for my grandmother. And so essentially my parents got together, and me and my older brother were born. And there were a lot of different things that we kind of went through. I grew up in North Highlands, California, which is near McClellan Air Force Base. When they shut down McClellan Air Force Base, North Highlands, we lost over 150,000 jobs, with Mather also being closed at the same time. They're about 6 miles apart from each other. So we grew up in a very hard area. I'm the product of a secret family that my father had with my mother. And she defaulted to the church. And I remember growing up where we would always walk to the church, and we'd get there, and they'd have food boxes and different lines and different things like this. And while we were there, my mother would tell us, you have to volunteer. You have to go and do this as well. And so my mom, she didn't really speak English. She's from Tonga. And so she'd make us volunteer and all of this, and we would be a part of my brother and I used to do the puppet ministry for youth while we were younger.
I'm familiar with that ministry. I did that when I was in junior high.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yep. And I did it since I was about 6 years old, and and I really remember back, and I can tell you this: the first true time that I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior was actually on New Year's, where I was old enough to make that decision consciously for myself. And we were in Trinity Life Center, which is an amazing church. Pastor Glenn Cole, who was a huge pastor, he was the one who started Capital Christian in Sacramento. They had this youth event and all of this, and I could just feel something different inside of me at that time, where I think that's where truly my life changed, and it was a pretty radical time. It was rad to be with a lot of younger individuals that were just energetic about their belief and where they want to be, and the camaraderie and the family and everything else. And something that spoke to me, and I got down on my knees and I laid down on the ground and I accepted Jesus Christ. This was New Year's of 2008. I was about 12 years old, where I can consciously see it. And I had seen everything else that I had done, the food drives, working the carnivals, and doing everything else. But there was something on this date that I truly felt in my heart that I needed to welcome in. And then later I think the next Sunday, because they were asking everybody to be baptized, I'm pretty sure the next Sunday is when I was baptized. My choice. Not the choice of my mother's taking me to school. I was also in Royal Rangers, so I don't know if you're familiar with Royal Rangers at all.
I'm not for Royal Rangers, but I do see the significance of the age and the baptism. 12 seems to be that age where you finally connect to who Jesus is. It's a common age.
And it was my choice.
Yeah.
And because I could always say that I was a Christian since, I've never known not to be a Christian, because we were always at this church. And, I have some amazing pastors in my life, like Pastor Chuck Solstead, amazing. Pastor Ryan, Commander Ryan too, because he was the commander of our Royal Rangers, Outpost 32. That, just all of these different things. But it was my choice, was on that New Year's in 2008, with everything that was kind of going on. And that's where I think the significance in that part is really where I just felt something different. So it's interesting. Interesting to think back, through everything that's kind of gone on, and I look at where my life is today, and the divine intervention, and I can tell you this: I am blessed beyond belief. Even though a lot of things have been extremely hard in my life, I think it's for a reason. I wouldn't be here today if I didn't go through a lot of those struggles and different things that had come up, and the differences with my mother and my father and all of this. And so, but there's always been a default for me, and the default is believing in Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. And when things have gotten hard, I've been listening to a lot of the Psalms, and listening to the songs of, King David and like his writings and all of this other stuff. And, because he did that while he was on exile, and he was out and an outcast and in the hardest part of his life. And yet he still defaulted to writing songs for his belief. And so I've been thinking about that quite often.
Yeah, the Psalms are very reinforcing when times are tough. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that it's that's probably the most beautiful thing about them is that you can be like, okay, when it's like some people just read them, you know what I mean, and like, oh, that's fine, but like if you're really struggling at something, they have a whole nother level of meaning because you can fully relate. Like, yeah, I'm feeling that right now.
You're exactly right. I'm forgetting which one it was, but I was actually just doing a morning devotion. My father passed away 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, man.
Thank you. I remember somebody who used to go to Trinity Life Center with us. He would always come in and he said, Psalms are songs that David would sing, and he would sing to us the verses. And how they would come out, and he did all of this. And there was one that I remembered, and I was trying to find it. I just don't remember the verse right now. But it had talked about even King David's doubt on why it's so hard right now, and going through the struggle and everything else and everything. And then in the end, he still goes, but you are in charge, and I may not know, but there is a reason for it all, and you will see me through this, and so I remember reading that 2 days after my father passed away, and I was like, okay, there's a purpose, there's something else. I don't have to know. I'm probably not going to know until things come to fruition. And so that it really brought a lot of peace in that part, and I think it's just so interesting to see.
That's awesome though. It's really refreshing to talk to somebody who's, because it's even though you're what you're running for is another level beyond what you normally have been doing, but the truth of the matter is, man, it's refreshing that you're focused on God. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean, and everything else is secondary. I've had people snow me where they try to like say God is their focus, and politics or whatever their business is or whatever is secondary. But you can talk to them, you can tell. You know what I mean? It's like where their mind is a different focus. Mm-hmm. Where it's really clear your focus is still, your center is still Jesus and God.
It's interesting. I've been I'm with this group called Holy Smokes. I don't know if you've heard.
I do know them.
I love them.
We actually did a show on them, and I know most of those guys. Mm-hmm. Like I've known them from when I was a kid.
Yeah, and there was they were going through the book of Acts, and as we're doing it, we were reading this part about Peter, and I related so much to it because, and to be honest, there's a lot that I've kind of gone through where, Peter is, Jesus' right hand. Mm-hmm. But Peter doubted, Peter questioned, and Peter always had this thought in his mind, I am not worthy. I am so not worthy to be crucified like Jesus Christ put me upside down on the cross.
Exactly.
And I just relate to that so much to where, I think, and I look at kind of like what I've gone through in my life, similar to Peter, why? Why do I have to go through this? Why during this time right now? Why is it so hard? And doubt. And it's just a real thing. And then I look back and I think about everything else, and it's like, I have no doubt in my mind. The doubt in my mind comes from just questioning on why it has to be so hard, but not questioning on what I believe in.
Right.
You know, there's no question in that, because I would not be here today without divine intervention. Peter didn't know, and I look at the story of the disciples, and I think it's one of the most beautiful story, even though it's one of the hardest stories. And that's what I talk to a lot of Christians about. It's like the disciples followed Jesus Christ because none of them became rich. This is one of the only religions, I think it is the only religion, that the true king and the true believer didn't become a warlord or prophet or anything else.
No, Jesus was a homeless man.
homeless, and died on the cross. And then all of his followers, instead of dissolving and everything else, all, whether they're pulled apart or upside down on a cross or they hang themselves or something else, they all died because it was worth it, you know, and because it was hard. So even though when it's hard, and what I'm going through, I can tell you this, it's not as hard as the disciples. It's nowhere near.
No,
You know.
we have a different kind of challenge, but it's nothing like it's nothing like being stoned to death or you know, being, you know, tortured to try and say that Jesus isn't real. I mean, you know, and it would be arrogant for all of us in our cushy day and age to think that, you know, we could hold up like the disciples. I'd like to believe that if I was tortured, I would. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You know, yeah. I mean, it's, you know, I bring up my life verse a lot, so I wear this to remind me of my life verse. A lot of people wear crosses. I stopped wearing crosses for years because I thought, okay, well, it's, you know, it's like, you know, why are you wearing a cross? You know what I mean? It's like just a, you know, a symbol. But then, like, I have a different mindset on it now, and I wear a wooden cross, not a jewelry cross, not a gold, silver, but a wooden one. And the reason why is Matthew 16:24, which is, if you want to be my disciple, you must deny yourself, pick up your cross, and follow me. So, you know, I'm wearing my wooden cross, I'm carrying my cross, you know, but it's to remind me, you know. And it's that kind of thing that, you know, gets me through the really tough times. You know, it's why it's my life verse. It's because I got to realize that I am doing everything for my Lord. You know, everything I do, you know, he gives me a little bit of free time, you know what I mean? But then the rest of my life is assignment, you know? So it's, and I see you working for God, man. And I think that's awesome, man. It is a blessing and a joy to call you friend. You know, it is what you're doing is you know, kicking butt and taking names. You know what I mean? And you know, you're aggressive and you're smart and you're, you know, I would say ambitious, but not self-indulgent ambitious. You're ambitious for the ability to help others, not the ability to help yourself.
It's none of this is me. I mean, if you know, I talked a little bit. I'm a product of a secret family. You know, my mother's an immigrant from Tonga. We grew up in low-income housing in a very rough area. I used athletics, my athletic ability, which, you know, is given to me, to get out, get to Fresno State. I walked on. You know, there was a period there where I ended up sleeping on my teammate's couch and all this other stuff because everything. And there's so many just small things that I wouldn't have noticed until I thought back onto it, where it is just divine intervention, where there's one person there that decides to take a chance on me for no reason, you know, whether it's bringing me onto the team and then earning a scholarship and then doing all this other stuff and then meeting certain people that I have no idea, again, who they are, that put me in a different position. None of it is me. It can't be. It doesn't make any sense. And it's not supposed to. It's not always supposed to, because, you know, then, you know, if the script was already written on that part and we knew it, you know, people would become complacent, and I think that would take away from a lot of the faith. And you just got to keep believing. And, you know, even in this last few weeks in my life, where there's been major transitions, whether the election is up and down, the roller coaster ride of that, my father passing away in the middle of it, taking care of my family and doing all this, and then I look back to, well, where's the divine intervention in that? Now I have an opportunity to run for State Assembly District 8, where, we're coming into a very hard time here in California with everything that's going on. But also I have a chance to, my family lives in North Highlands, which is close to Sacramento. Maybe this was part of that same plan because I'm supposed to be up there a little bit more and take care of them and do some things different. I have a 16-year-old younger brother, and my mother is, she's getting, I don't know if she's going to see this, but she's getting a little bit older, but I get to spend some time with her and help my family move into a different transition. So it's like I look at all of these different things, and I just tell myself, it's not my choice. The things that are supposed to happen are out of my control because they have always been out of my control. And the greatest thing that I can be is grateful.
Yeah.
Grateful for everybody else that has been put in my life through my belief, and through Jesus Christ and what he's done for me. Because, again, the story doesn't make sense without divine intervention. It honestly doesn't. And for me, all I can do is say thank you.
Yeah, and if you make yourself available and you ask God to use you, He will. Mm-hmm. And that's the truth right there.
That's all I ask. Is just put me to work.
Yeah.
Put me to work because I will keep doing that.
And you know what? I mean,
well, I think about it in this case. Yeah. We met a couple years ago.
Right.
With Nathan and met again with Sparkle, and I had no idea that I would be in this position, and now we're here today, because you and I, we talked for 20 minutes in addition, but again, there's a reason.
Yeah.
There's a reason we met at Cup of Joy too, and it's just so different. It's so different on all of these small things that are put in place to where I stop questioning it and I just allow it to happen because that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, well, God has a plan, and if we ever think that we're arrogant enough to know what it is, we'd be
smacked.
We get smacked,
you
right?
Get smacked.
Yeah.
Jonah had that. Peter had that. Mm-hmm. All of them had it. And I'm just trying not to get smacked. So.
Right. Yeah. I have run into the smack a few times myself because I'll even brag on God's intervention in things, and then God's all like, well, what are you doing?
but you're exactly right. And that's where, when we were going through the book of Acts, King Saul, 40 years in charge. Now he started to think he was divine and all of that. What happens? He gets smacked. Mm-hmm. And they,
and
King David,
right?
40 years. Not only that, the Israelites wandered around the desert for 40 years because they started to idolize. And then what happens? They get smacked.
Right.
And it's and just looking at the entire story of the Bible, it's once man starts to believe that it is man, or it is you, the human, the worldly things, and all of that.
Or that we're special. Mm-hmm. Even though it's all God, it's still we think we're special, and God's helping us over the next person more. It's no.
It's every single time.
Yeah.
And there's a cycle. The Bible is in cycles, whether it's 12s, 40s, different things that they've looked at.
12 and 40, those are the two magic numbers, that's for sure. Yeah.
And 12 years, or 12 people, or 12 tribes, or 40 years, different things like that. It's just, how many times does it have to repeat it for you to understand what's in the minutia? Right. And that's where it's you will get smacked one way or the other. And so, I just look at it that way, and I was yep, and this is a saying that I say to myself all the time, and actually made phone calls today, thanking people that are supporting me in my campaign, and just saying, today's a good day to be grateful. Every day is a good day to be grateful, and that's how I live that's how I live my day-to-day life.
Yeah. Well, I support you in your campaign, obviously. Not just because you're my friend, but because, we've had a lot of conversations, but we had one really deep conversation about politics, and I really love your approach, and the fact that you definitely are not doing this about seeking popularity or power or any of that kind of stuff, that you actually believe in making a difference, that you actually believe in serving others, and that's why you're doing it. And that, to me, is high-level integrity, you know. And so I definitely support what you're doing, and you know, I you know, people sometimes, like, obviously, I'm not trying to blow you up or anything, you know what I mean? But I do tell a lot of people, you know what I mean, when they're talking politics, that they got to watch this guy right here, because there's nothing magical about him, except that he has a strong faith in God, and God has decided to use him.
Yeah,
you know?
and it's nothing special about me, nothing. And again, I go back to the people who were put in my life because of my faith. I mean, that's honestly 100% divine intervention that has played a role to where I think about all of those individuals that took a chance on me, that supported me, that for some reason said, I mean, I think back to this. So I worked at McDonald's when I was 15 years old. And while I was there, a guy drives through the drive-thru, hears me on the drive-thru intercom and says, hey, I'm a house painter, like I'm a contractor for painting. I'd like you to come and work for me and to do these different things. And, you know, I go on a weekend and I decide to work with him. And, you know, he pays me a whole lot better than McDonald's did at the time. That money I used to go to a football camp that then helped me get recruited to go play at Fresno State, which, again, there were individuals there and families and farmers that were there that decided to take me in when I was homeless. And I am doing all of this because these markers in my life and these people that showed up out of nowhere, it's my turn to serve them because I have been given a service that I do not deserve. I am in a position that I never thought I would be in. I think about with Supervisor Magsig. I mean, the opportunity to meet him, I had already graduated from Fresno State football team, but Coach Tedford wanted myself and Kyle Rittering, another player and a good friend of mine, his birthday was yesterday, sent us to go. And I meet Supervisor Nathan Magsig, and he's the chair of the board at the time. And he says, I want to meet with you. And we stay in contact for 2 more years, and there's a position that opens up, and he had all these other opportunities to hire somebody that was already in the industry and everything else. And he decides to take a chance on me. And it's all of these different things. It just doesn't make sense to me to where I know I'm exactly where I need to be. I'm exactly where I need to be because it was intended for me to be here. And again, the only thing I can say is thank you, and please let me serve more.
Yeah.
Please let me serve more.
That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. So, again, you know, we talk about Jesus here, not so much politics.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Although
Which is where, I think that's divine intervention on the political side.
Right.
You know, and not only that, we look at the Bible with Pontius Pilate and everything else. There's a whole lot of politics there.
Well, I mean, I do.
Politics of the church, too.
Yeah, I mean, people who know me know that I stick my nose in politics. You know what I mean? I just do. You know, it's like, you know, I don't ever see myself running for office or anything like that because it's, you know, it's really not who I am. I'm more of a promoter. You know what I mean? Than
I don't know. I might recruit you because those are the best.
Well, you know, if God calls me, I'm there. You know what I mean? But
Exactly.
but you know, I mean, I'm pretty radical. You know, it's going to be hard to get people to vote for me. But you know, the thing that I love about you is that you are not a smokescreen kind of guy. You know what I mean? You're going to say what's on your mind. You're going to say what's on your heart. You're going to be honest, and you're going to be gentle. If somebody is not receiving what you're going to say, you're going to be gentle about it. That is, it's obvious to me that God has trained you from a small
person into who you are now, to
a little larger.
yeah, tower over me, man. But to be used by him. You know what I mean? I hope that it is, in the political arena, because I see you holding on to your authenticity and not being one of those guys that, well, I've made it, now I'm going to, exploit it, and I think that's awesome. I mean, we need more people like you in politics, people that are genuine, that are authentic, that are, that are young enough to take the fight on for a long time. Versus those people who start in their 60s. You know what I mean? It's like, no, I've said this before, man. I feel blessed to call you friend. I am excited to see where things go and how God uses you. You got my full support. Anything that I can do, you can just reach out and ask. And if it's possible for me to do it, I'm doing it. You know what I mean?
And I appreciate that. And I tell people this too. It's like when they ask me, oh, what do you want to do in like 20 years and all this? I was like, in 20 years, I want to be a high school football coach. I want to coach my son's team, and I want to hang out with my family, and I want to serve my community. I want to have, because food drives were actually so important to carrying us in life, and because the church did it for us, I want to create communities again. I want to give back and make it here. We don't need to wait for government to come in and save us. God's going to save us. Mm-hmm. Replace the G's, and you'll be in a lot better place if you're waiting for one over the other.
Right.
And that's where I want to be in 20 years. I want to help here. And I just don't see that happening right now with the current path that we're going in politics, with people at each other's throats. And we've seen the degradation to be just religious in your own, and convicted in your own beliefs, and ridiculed and mocked and all this. And it's like, allow the individual, I love devoted Christians that are out there and proud, because it seems like this society right now is just trying to make it to where we're diluting what we're proud to be about, where you're a rad Christian, all of these different things. It's like we've just gotten to a position right now. It's like, it doesn't have to be this complicated. God is guiding us. That's the direction that we need to move in, and you just need to embrace it. Yeah. And once you embrace that, it gets so much easier. And that's where I just allow the light to lead me. I move from that direction, and again, our relationship is another one of those where you never know. I mean, we're randomly talking in the back studio as a staffer, and you're doing the production and everything else, and now we're here today.
Yeah.
And then, the next step. What is it?
Who knows, man? Who knows? I'm excited to see it. You know what I mean? I hope God continues to use me. I hope God continues to use you. We're out of time for our interview, but definitely going to have to bring you back on. You know what I mean? I know you're a busy guy, but we'll get you back on.
We're running around a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
This district's the size of North Carolina, so
right. It's a little bit. District.
Yeah.
But you know what? Like we say here on the show, man, you're definitely rad for Christ. You're definitely fired up for Jesus, and we love to see that here, man. God bless you.
Thank you, and we should bring back some of the puppet ministry.
I think we should.
I haven't seen it for a long time, so I would love to.
Yeah, we should consider that. Yeah.
I think it would be, just let's get back to the basics. VeggieTales puppet ministry.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. All right. Cool, man. Cool. Housekeeping time. Yes, housekeeping is the time that I sit here awkwardly and talk to you about how radical Christianity operates off of donations. We could really use your help to make sure this show goes smoothly and gets better with time. If you are enjoying the show, if you believe in what we're trying to do, it would be fantastic if you would partner with God and share 5, 10, 15, 20, whatever it is you have to share. Basically, the way to do that is you go to our website. That's radforchrist.com. That's RAD4, Christ.com. And you go to the donate link at the top there, and that will take you to the Mr. E Christian Media donation page. Mr. E Christian Media is the 501c3 that we operate within. And you can just go to that donation form, drop down to Radical Christianity as a selection, and then go ahead and decide whatever number God has put on your heart to give, and then share it with us. And we will obviously reach out to you to thank you. And it is a beautiful thing to partner with God. And it would be a blessing for us. I'm sure it'd be a blessing for you. And it would be a wonderful, wonderful thing. So if you cannot share monetary items, that's fine. What you could do is you could share the show. You could post it on social media, share it with a friend in a group, in a chat room. Tell people about it online. Tell people about it at work. Make your sister sit down and watch it with you. Whatever it is that you can do to spread the word, that'd be great. And if you can't even do that, you can pray for us. That would be very helpful as well. If you can just pray for the show, the people on the show, the guests, the host, that kind of thing, people that work behind the scenes. Pray that we get the funds that we need to operate smoothly. All those things can be prayed for. We would appreciate your prayers. And if you need prayer, you can reach out to us. We'd be happy to pray for you. So anyway, with all that said, I would like to thank you for watching, and on with the show. Ladies and gentlemen, this next guest is super awesome. She has got a whole bunch to share, and I'm excited for you to hear it all. So let's have a huge, warm welcome for Diane Pearce.
Woo! Great to have you here.
Thank you.
Please sit down. And then, Diane!
True.
Welcome to Radical Christianity.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm excited for this conversation. So Clovis City Council.
Yes.
That's kind of, people don't realize that's actually very important, especially since Clovis is expanding dramatically.
Right.
And it's annexing new areas, and there's all the water rights stuff, and what gets put
There's
there.
a lot.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big job.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, I think it's bigger than some people realize. It's different than like Fresno City Council because we are part-time. We don't have the big salaries or anything like that. Everybody has other jobs that they're busy doing full-time. So that's a real challenge too because, as you noted, we're really growing and expanding, and a lot of those issues are coming before us, and we're not full-time. So it's really been a challenge to learn that balance of my work life, personal life, and then serving on the city council and doing all things well. Yeah, easier said than done, but I try.
Yeah, well, that's what God's there to help us for.
No kidding.
Right? All right, so the way we normally do things here is we have basically testimony, my head, testimony to service. So basically let us know how you met Jesus.
Yeah, my story is one of growing up in a Christian home. My parents are both originally from the Midwest and wound up moving out here for my dad to attend seminary after they became Christians. And so I was the only member in my family born in California. They were out here again for my dad to attend the Mennonite Brethren Biblical Seminary, and he started as an associate pastor at the church that I grew up in. He didn't wind up staying in the ministry. He wound up serving in some other faith-based organizations with financial planning. He had a background in law and some of that, but that was my kind of basic home base was church. And I was one of those babies that got passed around during the service, and my mom would have to find out who had me afterwards, But grew up in Sunday school, church, youth group, summer camp, all of that. And my mom wound up teaching at Fresno Christian. She had an education background and had not gone back to teaching until I was in 5th grade. And she went to work at Fresno Christian Junior High. And so my brother, who's a year and a half older than I am, we both were able to go there for junior high and high school. And so kind of through that entire process, I can't pinpoint that one moment. There were many different moments, but the totality of it really grounded me in the Bible, grounded me in who God is in my life, and then who Jesus is and his redemptive work on the cross, which great time to be here celebrating Easter coming up and all of that. And so when I graduated from Fresno Christian, I felt very strongly that I had been in kind of that Christian church bubble, really involved in my church, going to a Christian school, and I felt like it was time for me to kind of test my faith in a sense and make sure that it truly was mine and that I was ready to defend it and all of that. And so I intentionally did not apply to any Christian universities or colleges like so many of my friends did. And I went to UC Davis. And I'd always been interested in politics. And so I just thought at that point, I'm going to pursue political science as my degree path. And if and when I decide I don't like it anymore, I'll find something else. I didn't really know exactly where I was headed with it, but I knew that was my interest. So went to UC Davis, that had a fantastic church and college group up there through the First Baptist Church. And so again, got plugged in with other believers and had a really tremendous experience, but definitely came back knowing and feeling like, okay, I've got this good sense and ability to be in the world, but not of the world. And that's kind of how I've approached things and wound up getting back involved in politics and really having that approach of participating in the world and in those things, but not letting that influence me in a way where I become of it. And so that was kind of my path to service, was following that.
Well, that's awesome. That's good. A lot of people say, well, my testimony's boring because I grew up in the church.
Yeah.
But I think that actually is a reinforcement message to people who are just getting started with families and that kind of stuff to really think about getting yourself in the church, especially you fathers out there.
100%.
Especially you
Yes.
new fathers, you newly married men, whatever. Get yourself in the church because you're the head of the family.
Right.
It's your responsibility. And they say that if the father's in the church, the children, especially the son, is more likely to be in the church when they get older. So it's important because it's a foundation.
And it's true. And I've seen, not just for myself in certain ways, but so many of the people I grew up with, whether it was in church or at Christian school, where, there is a period where you're testing the waters and you're trying to make your faith your own or whatever it might be. And I've seen so many of them be able to come back to that foundation and that truth of what they knew all along. And it's there for them to come back to, those prodigal type stories. Some of them more sensational than others. But to an extent, I think we all have a little bit of that. No matter what it is that might turn our heads for a time, we know where we're supposed to be. We know where the truth is and how to find it, and getting plugged back in is so much easier than getting plugged in for the first time. If you have that foundation, if you have those experiences, it's so vital for your kids. Drew is right. Dads, moms, go to church. Go to church. It is so incredible. It's more valuable than you realize each Sunday when you're sitting there, to make sure that your kids have that. Because you don't know where they're headed, you don't know what direction and paths they're going to take, but you can guarantee that they have that foundation to go back to. And hopefully they never leave, but at least they have it to go back to.
Right, and I'm a living example of that. My father was a Southern Baptist ordained, and my mother grew up Assembly of God.
Okay.
So imagine the...
I can a little bit because my husband grew up Assembly of God and I grew up Mennonite Brethren.
Okay, then, so you understand.
Yeah, there's a little bit of combustibility there.
Right. It's two different worlds,
It is, yeah.
But it's like people look at me like, you're a charismatic Baptist.
Yeah, exactly.
But the backslipping and all that kind of stuff, it becomes training because I come back.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's like our pastor will use the term working on your testimony. However, I look at it as training.
Yeah.
Because God will use us. I think God uses everybody, including those people who don't even have any idea who God is using, or maybe they don't follow him and love him or know him or at all, and God's still using them. And the most amazing part about it is like I get to look back now and look at the fundamentals that were poured into me as a child, and if I didn't have those, it would have been a lot harder for me to get pulled back in. Like when your life is falling apart, it's like where do you go?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Some people turn to drugs and crime and all kinds of horrible things, and then they maybe are lucky enough to find Jesus, and then they got to spend their whole time, fighting their drug habit in Celebrate Recovery or whatever, and they have that pathway. But then those people who were blessed to have their parents love them enough to make them go to church.
Right.
Just make sure I reinforce that.
Yeah, I think that might be the tenor of this interview. We'll come back to that many times.
Yeah, but yeah, so I love those testimonies that people grew up in the church, and it's their foundation, it's their fundamental. Just saw Unsung Hero last night.
Oh, okay.
I'm plugging this movie like crazy because there's this family faith thing. I'm not blessed enough to have a big family. I'm not blessed to have children of my own. Maybe someday, but I'm getting kind of up there in years. I'm kind of
I know
like
the feeling.
But I look at that and like their family unit. In fact, the slogan of the movie is "Family isn't in the way; they are the way." Yeah. And so I think that it's just such a beautiful thing that because having I don't know if you're familiar with the movie at all.
I've heard about it, but I don't know.
Rebecca St. James
Right, okay.
was from that family.
Okay.
And then the King and Country band were also her younger brothers that were in the family.
Gotcha.
So yeah, and I mean that whole family is all like
Wow.
super creative, and they're all involved, and you know what I mean, and they're a big family unit. But their faith has been their foundation, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean. So it's like it's this beautiful movie. I saw it last night, and I'm like, well.
You're right. Better take the tissues with me.
Yeah, you definitely need to take the tissues with you. So that plug aside.
Yeah.
So then you did politics in school, learned, and political science. So is the city council, Clovis, your first political assignment?
It is the first time I ran for office. Again, when you talk about being able to look back and seeing God, chart the course. I met my husband. We both have degrees in political science. My husband, Jeremy, went to Fresno State, and we met in a political office. We wound up getting married and had really pursued our business because everything was good, And then in 2015, as we're just kind of sitting around watching things happen, he came across an article about a Wiccan priestess giving the invocation at a city council meeting. I believe it was in Idaho. I could be mixed up now. This was almost 10 years ago. And he read that article. And I remember so vividly him sitting in his chair. I was sitting on the couch and he's telling me, oh my goodness, look at this. And, that was a, Thursday, Friday evening, something like that. And we were re-engaged in politics the next week. There was a central committee meeting for the Fresno County Republican Party, and we attended, got back involved because we felt like the direction of the country, but everything was heading in such the wrong direction and further away from those what used to just be called traditional values, but we really recognize them as biblical values and conservative values, whatever you might want to call them. We're really coming under assault, and so we felt like we were no longer able to just enjoy God blessing us in our business and had to get back involved in politics, which he'd also given us an interest and passion for. And so we did that. And the course of that actually was my husband, Jeremy, running for Fresno City Council in 2016. Felt like that's where God was leading him. He said he even felt God telling him, there's something about this you're really not going to like. There's always those callings and then the challenge within the calling. But we knew that God had brought us to that. And so we ran that race. We came in second to Gary Bredefeld, who is now getting termed out of that seat, and had to struggle then with that question of, okay, God, you told us to do this. We did it. What's this? We thought this was going to lead into serving. But interestingly enough, a few months after the campaign had ended, Jeremy got a call from Gary. And one of the things that Jeremy was really interested in through his campaign was getting our national motto, "In God We Trust," put in the council chambers. There'd been a movement of that headed up by a gal in Bakersfield who serves on their city council, who was working to get as many counties and cities and jurisdictions to put the national motto in their chambers. And Fresno hadn't done that. And so that was something that Jeremy had been interested in. And lo and behold, a few months later, he gets a call from now Councilman Gary Bredefeld saying, hey, I'm interested in doing this. I know you had talked about it. Do you want to help me? And that was a way that God was able to create a friendship and an opportunity for us to see something come out of that. Not the way we thought it was going to, but it just really kind of started opening more doors. And through that process, I'd gotten involved with Fresno County Republican women during the campaign, really incredible people. And through that, then we got some calls from KMJ radio station had called to see if Jeremy wanted to fill in on one of their shows. One of their hosts was going to be out. And at that point, Jeremy felt like he wanted to go back and focus on the business. But I had kind of gotten a little more established in the political side. And so he said, well, I'm not interested in doing that. You do it. And I was like, excuse me? But they actually did wind up asking me, so, well, you want to come do it? And I said, okay, I can do it. And there was a political show on a local TV station that also had initially reached out to ask Jeremy to come and be an analyst on the show. Jeremy said, no, why don't you do it? And so they did actually ask me. And so I started taking more of those media opportunities and getting more involved on the political side of things. And again, just kind of went back to taking those opportunities as they came, speaking about our conservative biblical values, and trying to promote those in a way that was accessible to people. And one thing led to another. We wound up being able to move to Clovis. We were able to build a beautiful new home there. And we thought that moving to Clovis meant, all right, we're good now. Clovis has it under control, all is well, and we're just going to be able to kind of support what's going on. We moved into our home in February of 2019. And so just at the 1 year mark, the world falls apart.
Right.
And we have a small business. It's an entertainment company. My husband is Jeremy Elvis Pearce. So we do Elvis shows all around the valley, about 200 a year.
Does he do Elvis impersonation?
Yes, he is an Elvis tribute artist.
We need to have him on this show.
Oh, there you go. You know, we were talking earlier, everything's a ministry. And we have the unique opportunity and blessing to be able to use Elvis shows as ministry tools. We do Elvis gospel shows. In fact, on Good Friday, we're going to be doing a gospel show. And so God's incredible. He's super creative and cool, right?
Right.
And so he doesn't miss an opportunity to reach people where they are. And there are still so many Elvis fans around that a lot of times what gets them to come and set foot in a church is an Elvis gospel show. And we've had the opportunity to get to know people to the level where they get a cancer diagnosis and they ask him to pray with them. And so there he is, I mean, full Elvis getup, praying with someone over their cancer diagnosis. And those kinds of opportunities are really why we do what we do. But, you know, God gives you the talent, he gives you the abilities, and then if you follow him, he'll do some pretty cool things with it. But needless to say, when COVID hit, we started getting the phone calls, show after show after show, obviously canceled, and we had no idea what we were going to do. We had just moved into this new home. We had just started our backyard landscaping and, you know, paid half the bill on that. And we're like, we don't even know how we're going to afford to pay the second half. Maybe you should not do this. And all that. So, I mean, of course, that was a stressful and crazy time for everyone. But we were kind of in that position where nobody really even knew how to think we were going to be affected. There aren't as many full-time entertainers in this area that you'd think. Most people do it as a hobby. You know, they do a few gigs on the side, but it was both of our full-time jobs. And, you know, here we have this new house, new mortgage, all of this. And so it was very, very crazy. Fortunately, I can honestly say that God had prepared the way for us, and I was never afraid. Jeremy and I both knew that God would continue to take care of us. He's proven himself over and over again. He was going to continue to take care of us. But one thing that we found very quickly was, okay, maybe we're not done with politics. Because as we started to look around and you saw the people who were making the decisions to shut down our businesses, to close our churches, to, you know, restrict everybody's movements, one thing we realized that on the Clovis City Council specifically, not a single member of the 5-member council was self-employed. So none of their paychecks were actually in jeopardy. They were all in other positions where they didn't have to suffer it the same way the rest of us did. Everybody suffered. You know, one of the things I kind of disliked that was people saying we're all in the same boat. It's like, no, we're all in boats, but they are not the same. Let me assure you that. But, and so we felt like, okay, there's an opportunity here, and that's a perspective that, you know, Clovis is known for its small businesses, and that is a thriving economic engine in the city of Clovis. And so to not have that represented on the governing body, we felt like was something that was missing. And so needless to say, I had plenty of time on my hands that year. And so I wound up running for Clovis City Council that year, knocked on thousands of doors. Again, I had nothing better to do, and met with people, talked with people, and really, it was an incredible experience. I wound up there. Clovis is at large, so we don't run in districts. Everybody runs citywide, and then however many seats are up, the top, however many vote getters get those seats.
Right.
So there were two seats up, 2 incumbents were running. I did come in third, but I had a rather impressive showing. I think people kind of took note, because in Clovis, there's really almost no such thing as beating an incumbent. There's no term limits either, so they serve for a long, long time historically. And so it's quite an endeavor to take on to start with, but I think the message really resonated with people. And interestingly enough, the next cycle when it came up was just a year and a half later, and 2 of the gentlemen who were in the 3 seats that were up that cycle weren't seeking re-election. Bob Whalen moved on to serve as a judge, and Jose Flores decided not to run for re-election. So there were 2 of the 3 seats up. And again, I thought I was done. I thought, okay, I did it. I'm good. I put my time in, but I don't have to serve. And then it became pretty clear. It's like, no, this is just an extension of the previous campaign. It was a shorter duration because things had kind of shifted, but I already had so many of those doors under my belt. I'd already met with so many people, and it was just a year and a half later, and this time I was successful, and I came in second for the 3 seats that were up. And so I took my oath of office in December of 2022, and I now have a year on the council under my belt. It's a 4-year term, and I'm not sure what God was thinking. Right? People ask me, it's like, well, are you enjoying it? And I answer them as honestly as I can, and that is, I think if I was enjoying it, I wouldn't be doing it right, because it's incredibly challenging for some of the reasons you mentioned, the growth, and just when you realize that the decisions you're making and the votes you're casting, the direct impact it has on people's lives, and that it's not something that's lost on me, and I want to make sure that I have full information, that I've properly educated myself on the different topics, and that I'm really prayerful, honestly, in how I handle it, and that it's not my own thoughts, but that I really seek God's guidance in all of those things. But there's a lot of other things that come before and kind of work their way into the political discussion, and that's probably been the biggest challenge in the last years, is navigating some of those other things.
Yeah, I can imagine, considering, I mean, I know Clovis pretty well. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of friends there. I don't know. I go to Clovis Hills is my church. Uh-huh. So I consider Clovis is also home to me, mm-hmm. even though I live in Fresno.
Sure.
But the thing about Clovis is that you have 2 distinct mindsets. Mm-hmm. Very distinct. You have the hey, we're a small town, country town, and then we have hey, no, we're a thriving metropolis going to happen. And it's like, neither of those are actually accurate anymore, but
it's true, and that's one of the things that people talk about, that Clovis way of life. What is that? Mm-hmm. Because a lot of the people want to say, well, it's kind of that country vibe or rural residential type development that's, you have a bigger spread and all of this, and it's really, really changing, in part just because of the growth of the city, but in part because of the state we live in and the mandates and regulations that get handed down. They really are trying to get people closer and closer together. You hear about density mm-hmm. a lot, and they really don't want those 1-acre parcels. They want you to have, 6 houses per acre and smaller lot sizes and all of these different things. And so
and like 3-story and 4-story apartment complexes. And,
yeah, looking right into your backyard. Nobody's happy about that. So having to navigate some of those things is really challenging. But Jeremy and I both felt when we re-engaged in politics, we knew why it was. And 2015, again, when we kind of got back involved, was also when Franklin Graham was doing, I think he called it Decision America tour, and was talking about how incredibly important it was for Christians to run for office at every level of government. And so, again, we knew very clearly that we weren't just getting engaged for land use and for development and those kinds of things. We were getting engaged because of the culture issues and the moral decay that we saw going on in the country, and we wanted to be able to speak to that. And so that was also something that I knew I was going to be taking on. People kind of think that Clovis doesn't have so much of that, and up until probably recently, that was relatively true. But again, as it grows, more people start to pay attention, and you start to get that target on your back, and you can't just fly under the radar anymore. That spotlight's going to be on you for so many things. And, it didn't take long. Just this past summer, we discovered that our Fresno County library system has some issues in the children's section of the library. And it came to my attention that the Clovis branch, again, it's a county library system. I serve on the city council, but we have a Clovis branch, which actually currently is mere feet from our council chambers. So it's kind of the same property, even though it's a county library. But the children's section had a display for the month of June that was featuring a host of LGBTQ plus books and books with gender transition, gender ideology themes that are, again, promoted to our kids. And I felt that it was important to let parents know that that was there in our public libraries. And so I put a post on my Facebook page with a picture of the display. And it just said, hey, parents, just want to let you know, you may want to wait till June is over to take your kids to the library. And that just blew up.
Right.
I had people commenting from all across the country, some people not even in America, telling me where I ought to go and what I ought to do with myself.
Well, I commend you for doing that. That's like the thing that we're probably the loudest about on this show is protecting children from, it's like everybody, you can love who you want to love, that's your business.
It is an assault on our children,
But
an absolute assault.
but when you bring in the kids, you're sexualizing them, and you should be ashamed of yourselves.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's one of those things. I was actually just telling my husband the other day, because again, one of the most frustrating things is, finding that out, taking on that battle, and fortunately, the end result of that, there was a whole lot of kerfuffle at the Clovis City Council. My colleagues told me that it was a county issue. I had no say over it. I shouldn't be talking about it. It had no business being brought up in the city council. It was a distraction, and that I was being divisive and harming our community by bringing it up. That's what some of my colleagues were telling me. And ultimately, I was the only member of the Clovis City Council to send a letter to our Board of Supervisors, because again, it's a county library system, asking them to address the issue and find a county level solution for it. And fortunately, our mutual friend, Supervisor Steve Brandow, had taken that up, and I'd been in communication with him throughout his work on it, and it resulted in the Parents Matter Act that he brought before the County Board of Supervisors, and I believe it was this past November. It actually passed and has been adopted by the county on a 3-2 vote. And so now part of that is a community oversight board to kind of review the materials and anything that is genuinely, and people could not believe the reality of the material that was in these books, but it was absolutely pornographic. And the level of graphic sexual content was just unbelievable. So now there's a review board that is in the process. People can turn in their applications. If you're interested in serving on the Parents Matter Act Community Oversight Board, there is an application process open currently, and you can reach out to your supervisor, your county supervisor, and find out about that process. But that oversight board is going to be reviewing the material, and despite people trying to insist that it is a book ban, it certainly is not. It is just taking those inappropriate books and putting them in a different section, still in the library, everybody, still there, but it puts parents in charge of whether or not their children get access to that material. And so rather than kids, 8-year-olds, whatever, having direct access to it, the parents are going to control that. So everybody still gets to do what they want to do. It just puts it back in the parents' purview.
I mean, it's not illegal for a parent to show their children pornography. That's their choice, you know?
Yeah. So, but anyway, so that, going through that process, finding that those were the types of issues that I knew were going to be the opportunity for me to speak out and to be that person who was willing to stand up and take the arrows and be the voice of, honestly, sanity, but also, those biblical values. But the truth is, you fight those battles, and then you come to find out that that was just a battle in a larger war. And there are still things in our county libraries that are completely inappropriate.
There's things in our school libraries that are completely inappropriate.
There are. And so, yes, we addressed a specific issue and found a remedy for that. But, even still, you'll find in the Clovis Library, they do staff picks. And just recently, they posted on the Clovis branch of the Fresno County Library System's Facebook page, the staff picks are books about the occult, tarot A to Z, how to fake date a demon, or a witch's guide to fake dating a demon, and all these occult witchcraft books that, it's like, oh, look, it's, Magic Month or whatever. And, even when you have, whether it's Black History Month, Women's History Month, so many of the featured books have an agenda and are pushing these things that are absolutely against God's plan. They're against the Bible, and yet, this is our public library system, and we've seen over the last few years so clearly that parents have to be hypervigilant, and Christians have begun creating their own spaces. Whether it's with like Kirk Cameron and his Brave books, it's a fantastic alternative to braving the library system. Go to Brave Books instead, and some of those things. And so again, it's that question of how are we in the world but not of the world? Where do we need to be engaged in a political sense, but where do we need to make sure that our kids are protected and we have those things that we can have a sense of trust, aren't going to be indoctrinating them and pushing them in a direction that we don't approve of.
And for those of you who weren't around, because this is even before I was born, back in the early 60s, there were several lawsuits that took the Bible, prayer, and a lot of religious, specifically Christian-based books out of the schools entirely.
Right.
And you will find books on all kinds of messed up stuff, but try and find a book that's Jesus-based in your children's library. You will be hard-pressed to find something, especially in the schools.
And where I've kind of come in my journey, faith journey, political journey, how those things all tie together is like, I've been trying to figure out, because again, Franklin Graham saying Christians run for office, Christians get engaged. You hear so often, if the church would vote, things would be different. And so I agree 100% that we need to be engaged there. But I think a lot of what happened in that time frame that you're referencing, the 60s, the 70s, and even through the 80s, was the church also kind of started to retract.
Not just from politics,
Yeah.
but also from media and other things. I've run a media ministry. It is something that I'm very adamant about. I feel as though we need to put our feet back into the waters when it comes to media, because we let go.
Yeah.
You can look at the last 20 years, ever since Proposition 8, there's an aggressive media takeover.
Right.
And aggressive, and so much money poured into television programs, movies, marketing, political agenda.
Yeah.
So much money just poured into it, and we're just like, well, God's going to take care of it.
Yeah.
It's like, excuse me, God blessed a lot of you with funds. Okay, you need to put those funds into organizations that are going to take that fight on, whether it's politics, whether it's media. You know what I mean? Here's a politician, here's a media company. Put your dollars where it matters.
No, there's so much truth to that. And, and what we've seen, and this is kind of where I've come to it, because it used to be, we need to get more Christians in politics. We need to be electing better people, has kind of been my mantra for a while. And I came to the realization that that's only so good, particularly here in the state of California, where things are so far gone. And we have such that super majority of not just Democrats, but liberal, progressive, woke legislators in Sacramento, that the tsunami that would be required of electing better people is monumental.
And you don't start with the elections.
Right.
You start with the mindset, which is the beauty of having, media understanding and starting getting it under control. Because if you allow people to say, okay, well, this is normal, and there's no counterpoint in the modern media to say, hey, you know what, that's not really normal.
Right.
If you don't have that counterpoint out there, then you basically just take your hands off the wheel, and who's going to tell them different? I mean,
and that's really what we see, because I think about what's the biggest difference between now and my mom grew up in the 50s and 60s, and she would always talk about, the differences of growing up then and then raising kids in the 80s and 90s. And now, I mean, it's even crazier. But the biggest difference was everyone kind of had a shared set of values. There were really communities. We're all she would say, you'd go play at, Susie's house down the street, and if you got in trouble, Susie's parents would discipline you, because it was going to be the same way your mom and dad were going to discipline you back home. And there just was so much more, again, that just kind of universal sense of how things were, common sense, and I believe that what happened is, again, kind of that shift you're talking about, when we started removing God from the schools and the church kind of started to retreat from engagement in society in that same fashion. We lost who set the moral conscience of our communities. And that's where I believe, if there's going to be a resurgence, if there's going to be a transformation of this state, of this country, of any of our neighborhoods and communities, it's going to be the church re-engaging and taking back that role of setting the moral conscience. Because as an elected official, what I need is for my community, for my that public opinion, in a sense, to be set with biblical values, so that I can then say, look, this is what we believe, this is where we want to see things go. Now I'm going to work in this lane of politics to kind of codify our common values. And it has to be the church, because right now, who is setting our agenda? Who is setting what people are talking about and where you see things heading? What is going on in Sacramento is an agenda set by Satan himself. And he has willing participants who are going along with that and proposing bills and pushing narratives. And it's a very dangerous time.
And they don't know they're serving Satan. They just know they hate God.
I think some of them might, but no. I mean, that's sad but true. He is very deceptive, and he makes it look so good. And you think you're helping people. And, one thing I've said before is, I think that, as Christians, we are called to speak the truth in love. And over the past couple of decades, I think the church today is doing an incredible job on the love part. We are very welcoming. We are very loving. We are borderline tolerant of all. And, we have some issues there. But I don't know that we are truly doing a good job at speaking the truth to those people. Because if you encounter someone who is living a lifestyle that is contrary to the Bible, we know that that does not lead them to eternal life with Jesus Christ. That leads them somewhere else. And if all we're doing is loving them, but we're not speaking the truth of finding repentance for their sin and turning and following Jesus, we're doing a really good job of loving them on their way to hell. And that's not what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, we're not supposed to. Well, I mean, it's as Christians, we have to be delicate, because we don't want to turn people off Jesus in the process of trying to turn them on to Jesus. And that's probably what happens a lot, is people, they think, well, they come at them Bible beating, and they come at them, taking away, stripping back. And it's like we have to really be. I feel as though the counterpunch should be showing them the better way, versus saying, okay, well, we're going to try and take this away from you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, there's so many things.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was to like pick up a hot topic right now, that it would be like, okay, so like the whole abortion thing, right? Now, I am not a fan of abortion at all.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think it's a terrible, terrible thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can understand some of the arguments, and I'm like, okay, well, as a medical procedure, in some cases, I can see, you know what I mean, the argument. You know what I mean? I'm not a woman. I'm not a doctor. I don't really get to say, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, it's kind of hard for me. I mean, I don't even have kids, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's kind of hard for me to have a statement about that. But I can see, like, the extremes on both ends, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I'm like, the approach that was taken to get where we are now, where, you know what I mean, has been so toxic that I think the backlash, you know what I mean?
I think there's some truth to that. I mean, there's kind of two things. Number one is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So everything has to be about building relationships with people. You're never going to, well, I shouldn't say never, God can do what he wants, but you're going to have a really hard time leading someone to Christ if you don't engage in a relationship with them, if you aren't trying to get to know them on a personal level. And I think the other thing is, it's the idea that when we speak the truth in love, you lead with love. But if you never get the truth to come alongside, if all you're doing is thinking, I'm just going to show them love, I'm just going to love them, I'm going to love them, that's not a bad thing. It's just not a complete package that can lead to repentance and salvation.
Right.
And so we have to be mindful that we aren't letting go of that other part, of truly sowing the seeds that the Holy Spirit can then water and reap the harvest of the souls. But at the same time, when it comes to an issue like life or abortion, you may not be a woman, you may not be a medical professional, but you know Scripture, and you know that we are all made in the image of God. You know that He knit us together in our mother's wombs. You know that He knows the hairs on our heads. So there's a biblical principle and value to life specifically that I think it doesn't matter who you are. I have not borne a child myself. I have a stepson. I have nieces and nephews, but I can still speak to life, and I can still let someone know that what God put in her womb is not a mistake. It may have been a mistake to get it there on your part, but God is going to work all things for good.
Right.
What may be a scary time, what may be a traumatic experience, God has a plan for that. And I don't believe that God's plans ever include murder.
Yeah, well,
if God is setting the course,
definitely not.
That's a specific thing, and it takes people to come alongside and a church full of compassion to come around those people. And again, like you say, it's how do you approach it? How are you going to speak about this to those people? And that's where, again, you lead with love, but you cannot then let someone think that they have an option.
Yeah, I think that the approach would have been better served because, again, the pro-choice movement spent a fortune on promoting the pro-choice idea.
And taking away the idea that it was life.
Right.
It's a clump of cells. It's,
Yeah, they
whatever.
spent a fortune doing that. And how much money was spent trying to make the point right? You know what I mean? So that's the problem. It's I mean, we could say, oh, it's politics. We could say people who make the laws, let's go there. But then what we really do is we compound the problem.
Right.
As Christians, as the church, as the combined body of Christians, which is the church, we need to go after mindsets.
Absolutely.
We need to lead with love, but we need to educate. If we try to force, you know what I mean, we're gonna get the backlash because not only maybe we'll win the fight in the short run, but we're gonna lose the souls.
Yeah.
Which is the bigger picture, And you know, I mean, you know, the old argument used to be abstinence. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, that was
Surefire.
that was yeah. If you don't do it, it ain't gonna happen.
Yeah.
You know, and you know obviously you can see how there's you can go back and trace how everything has a spectrum of consequence. But when it comes to such a topic like that, that's so hot and tempered, you know what I mean?
You know, again, I think it's part of who is going to set the tone, who is going to lead on those issues. When it's the church, when we have pastors in the pulpit who are preaching the Bible, preaching biblical values, preaching the value of abstinence, of God's plan for marriage, of man and woman, and all of that, if they are willing to tackle those things, and you can even take it into the more current hot topic of the transgender ideology, of the LGBTQ agenda. If we have pastors who are willing to preach the Bible, do not tell me it's political. It is not. These are biblical principles. These are biblical values.
Teaching the Bible is different.
Preach from the scriptures, and you can guide that societal sense, that community.
But the mindset in the church isn't the problem. You know what I mean?
Sometimes it is, though, right?
Well, to a degree. I mean, but most churches are preaching that kind of stuff.
But are they really preaching the sanctity of life? Are they preaching that abortion is wrong? Are they preaching that transgender ideology?
Well, every church is different.
Exactly.
Some are just preaching fire and brimstone. You know, some are preaching. We're all good. Everything is happy. I mean, there's the Presbyterian Church, and has a whole wing of itself that is just off the rails. So I mean,
the fact that there is a phrase of a affirming or gay affirming church. You know, I mean, I shouldn't be 100% comfortable sitting in church every Sunday. I'm supposed to be open to the Holy Spirit convicting me of the things in my life that I need to work on. And if all we're trying to do is welcome people into a comfortable environment, that's not what church is supposed to be. It's supposed to be fellowship. It's supposed to be focusing you on God, learning about who He is, and, going on that gospel path of redemption and salvation and repentance. But that's not comfortable.
Well, I look at the lack of outreach. I mean, getting people into church, what's preached in the church, I mean, is really not that different from church to church. I mean, if you go from the ends, you know what I mean? But, in North Clovis, I mean, there's like a dozen churches that all pretty much have the same. It's like you can go to Cross City or Clovis Hills or you know what I mean? And it's basically all the same.
There's
food.
A lot of similarity.
You know what I mean? And I always make the joke that we need to rename knees with a K. Needs to be with a K. But when it comes to like outside of that bubble, we're not doing enough. I mean, we will reach out to the homeless. We'll reach out to maybe some drug care, but we're not doing nearly the kind of thing that we should be doing.
Well, I mean, think about the type of outreach that Jesus did. He would say, oh, will you get me a bucket from the well, and I'll give you, water that'll make you never thirst again.
Right.
Here, let me feed you, but I'm the bread of life. And there was so much in that where it was meeting people's physical needs, but it was making them keenly aware of the spiritual needs that were far more important that only He could satisfy.
That is the thing. And then we need to make people aware of the consequences of some of these actions, and not do it in a way that we're finger wagging. We need, there's, again, I'm going back to media because that's where my heart is. That's where God leads me. Is we need to tell the stories. We need to put, I mean, this movie, I'm way on promoting it. Unsung hero. It's a perfect example of telling the story. I mean, it actually is a little bit more focused on a church-friendly positioning, But at the same time, it does dive into a music approach. You know what I mean? So, so a lot of people who have a love of music and all that kind of stuff, or wanted to be a musician or whatever, they can all get something from it. But there are all kinds of movies out there that can take the same approach and be indirect. I mean, think about how you could take sci-fi, you know what I mean, and sell sci-fi ideas and put Jesus in the center of that without actually, I mean, you don't even have to mention Jesus to communicate the concept, because then you get the concept and then you're not afraid of it when you come to the topic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about things like the Chronicles of Narnia.
Perfect.
And that,
Yes.
you get those concepts out there.
Yeah, Aslan, yes. As you accept and embrace Aslan, then you realize that Aslan's kind of based on Jesus, and you're like, oh, well.
Now I get it in a way that I might not have been able to get otherwise.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that creative approach.
Yeah,
Storytelling.
and I feel like we're not doing enough of that.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see some of that. Again, movies like Unsung Hero, there's a lot of those other movies coming along.
Thank you for Lionsgate to take a chance.
There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, Kirk Cameron, again, is doing a lot when it comes to books and having opportunities for parents to make choices that are going to instill positive biblically based values in their kids through children's books. So many different things are going on out there, and it's important to be aware, because again, that's probably, again, the most frustrating thing for me has been fighting battles, but realizing that's just part of a war. And you can win battles, but you might still be losing the war. And so don't ever mistakenly think that just because you are successful in one part, that now the whole thing is safe.
Right.
Because again, if COVID taught us anything, it's that parents have to be hyper vigilant. They have to be so involved and aware of what's going on in their kids' lives. And what's been so difficult for those who hold those traditional values, who have a conservative bent, we've been so busy living our lives. And there had been a sense of ability to just kind of trust that society at large was going to kind of be on your side on so many things, that a lot of things happen without our knowledge.
Right.
And you come in and you realize things are far more serious and further gone than you realized in such a short amount of time. But I think parents need to take their kids to church, families be in church, find opportunities like movies like Unsung Hero to expose your kids to those types of stories.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? And those of you who, are doing that, pray for those who aren't.
Yeah.
Prayer is the only weapon that we have, except for those of you who have big wallets. Just saying, those of you who have big wallets have the ultimate weapon in this country. And just so we know, it's like those of you who have deep pockets have the ultimate weapon. No matter who it is, again, I'm talking about outside the church, people are motivated by success. If you have money and you have the ability to throw it around, you will have more influence than you know what to do with.
Yeah.
So,
And
anyway.
if you choose to allow God to guide that influence, you can absolutely exponentially.
You can't fix the world alone, but you can do some good for Jesus, that's for sure.
Yeah.
We're so out of time.
I know, I was going to say, oh my gosh, we've been talking forever.
Yeah, I know.
But it's easy.
It is, and that you're definitely going to have to come back, and we're going to have to have more
happy to.
conversations, because
we just scratched the surface and we went way long.
we just went.
Yeah.
We can't even see what's underneath the paint yet.
I know,
what I mean?
I know.
But thank you so much, and you're
Absolutely.
definitely rad for Jesus. You're definitely fired up, and we love to see that. Actually, the term that I got to say it right for my audience is going to make fun of me. You're definitely rad for Christ, definitely fired up for Jesus, and that's what we love to see here.
Well, I appreciate what you do, Drew, and thank you for the opportunity to come and share that part of my heart with people. It truly is why I do what I do. And, my husband and I both are always looking for those opportunities, just follow God's leading. And that's where freedom is, too, is when you're doing what God wants, you don't have to worry about the rest of it.
Well, you have my information.
I do.
And you know how to get a hold of me. Anytime you need something from me, just ask.
Sounds good.
Because, I'm here to serve. So.
I appreciate that. I'm glad God's put you in this place.
All right. Well, God bless you.
Me too.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching Radical Christianity today. I hope that you got some really good stuff out of this. These are some really great people we had on today. I am excited for you to get that message and take it home and wear it deep inside yourself. These people are great people, and they definitely deserve your vote. So anyway, I want to talk to that person who's watching right now, who is hearing Jesus knock on their door. Maybe something we said touched you, brought you to the page, whatever it is. Maybe it's been working on your heart for a while. Either way, I want you to understand that having Jesus in your life is not a bad thing. It's a beautiful, beautiful blessing, and you should embrace it. I've never known anybody to think of their decision to follow Jesus as a mistake. So, if you don't know how to accept Jesus into your heart, it's actually pretty simple. You just kind of talk to him. You say something like, Jesus, I need you. Please come into my life. I understand that I'm a sinner, and I need you so I can have a relationship with my Creator. Thank you for everything you've done for me, and help me to walk the walk that you've designed for me, not the one that I've chosen for myself. Something like that. I mean, there's so many different ways. The wording is pretty simple, but what you just need to do is just tell Jesus that you want him inside. And if you say with your heart that he is Lord, say with your mouth that he is Lord, and believe in your heart that God rose him from the dead, you will be saved. Because that's the whole trick, you know what I mean? That he was risen from the dead so that we could have a relationship with God. I mean, he was actually died on the cross so we could have the relationship, but the risen from the dead is to prove that he is God. Anyway, so without me messing that up any worse, let's talk about what happens if you have prayed that prayer during this show or on a rerun or something like that. We have a website. It is radforchrist.com. RAD, 4Christ.com. And on that website, we have a form it says Got Saved. If you click on that form and fill it out, I would love to be able to send you a Bible and a little gift. I almost said sell, but no, we're not selling that. We're totally giving that to you. I don't want there to be any misunderstanding. And anyway, so if there's also a form for Ask a Question and a form for prayer request. So if you have a question about the show, the Bible, anything at all, math homework, feel free to ask away. And if you have a prayer request, please let us know. We would love to pray for you because we are here to serve. And this is the most important part of all right now. And that is that Jesus Christ loves you. And so do I. Thank you for watching Radical Christianity. We will see you next week.
And I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up, no, not me. Even if nobody else believes, I'm not going down that easily. So don't give up on me.